6 o'clock. My name is Jeremy Carrier, and I am the committee chair for the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I am starting this meeting now at 6 o'clock. So, for this evening on our agenda, I am going to start with the approval of minutes from our March meeting. So that was March 19th, 2019. Excuse me. The Granby Zoning Board of Appeals meeting on March 19th, 2019 was held at the Granby Public Safety Department building. Jeremy Carrier opened the meeting at 6:03 p.m. by reading the official meeting notice. Members of the Zoning Board of Appeals introduced themselves: Jeremy Carrier, Chair, Ronald Harrop, and Kathleen Bronner. Mr. Carrier noted that this was a meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals and was not a hearing. The general public present may only speak if the board wishes information or clarification on the pertinent matter within the meeting. First point of business was discussion on rescheduling the Granby Bow and Gun Club hearing that was originally set for was set at the ZBA meeting for April 9th, 2019. The context for this discussion was that the ZBA denied the waiver request by the Granby Bow and Gun Club to submit a full site plan of their property as per by the bylaws. Noting the club had received a copy of the bylaws that they were to follow, including topographical maps. A site plan was received by the ZBA, but it failed to meet the requirements set forth within the bylaws. Jeremy Carrier made the motion to reschedule the next ZBA hearing to April 23rd, 2019 at 6 p.m. Location is to be confirmed. At that time, the Granby Bow and Gun is requested to submit additional site plan information to the town clerk no later than March 21st, 2019, as already determined as a deadline for all site plans and documentation in regards to this issue. This motion was unanimously passed by the ZBA members. Kathleen Bronner asked what steps would be taken if the GBGC failed to turn in documentation by March 21st, 2019. Jeremy Carrier commented that a decision on how to proceed with any of the documentation would be addressed at the hearing. Jeremy Carrier read the ZBA meeting notes from January 8th, 2019 for the record. Motion was made to accept, and the ZBA members unanimously approved. Jeremy Carrier read the ZBA meeting notes from February 19th, 2019. Motion was made to accept, and the ZBA members unanimously approved. The next ZBA hearing is set for April 23rd, 2019. With there being no further business, the ZBA concluded the meeting at 6:15 p.m. Respectfully submitted, Jeremy Carrier, Chair, Zoning Board of Appeals. I make a motion to accept the notes as read.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay. Unanimously accepted. At this time, for the record, I'd just like each of the members of the board to please announce their name for the record.
Ron Harrop, member.
Anthony Wedvus, member.
And Jeremy Carrier, Chair. Our next point of business for this evening is a complaint from Mr. Polpacek. Do we have him present at the meeting? Okay. Sir, would you like to come forward and sit down, or
Sure.
if you'd like? At this time, it's just a reminder that this is a meeting, not a hearing, but I would like to hear from each of the complainants tonight, so that way we can get more understanding as to what the complaint is about. Okay. So in closing of your complaint on here, and I think a lot of it had to do with our code enforcement officer. Just give me 1 second. About cease and desist order that is with the gun club. And I said in closing that you're seeking that board to deny when possible, or at a minimum recommend denial for permitting, allowing the use and discussed property for future target placement and their subsequent use. If in fact any permitting is granted, it would be allowing the placement of targets with no regard to abutter safety and well-being. The statement is based on conversation you had with the environmental police, Lieutenant Anthony Trangnese, who cautioned you about the targets in question, inclusive of those along your property line, are not breaking any firearm laws. That control of their placement and use is only through town bylaw of zoning. Just like to discuss what it is that you're seeking from the board this evening for that.
Well, my complaint was initially directed to the selectmen for enforcing their cease and desist, which was set up back in 2017.
Okay.
And it's somewhat worked for the first couple months, and then the gun club just ignored it. They kept on it. And I put up with it for about 2 years now. It's be 2019. Basically, there's been meetings on this cease and desist, and at one point the police chief came in and stated that he couldn't enforce it. It was too hard for him to enforce. But I would say if that was the issue, what should be done is the targets of the area should be removed until it's resolved if they have the right to put the targets there or not. Simple. And why I'm here is because I was told that the zoning board officer, I believe, is that you?
Zoning enforcement
Not you.
officer.
Yeah. Denied any action on my complaint, which, I said, why? And he says I was looking for some forgiveness on zoning bylaw. I have no idea what that meant, What I'm looking for is enforcement of the cease and desist. And so the only way that I could appeal his judgment was through you, I was told.
Okay.
I don't understand a lot of the laws, and so I'm prompted by other people who have a better understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm here. Why was my complaint not looked into at least? I think within the zoning board, the officer, he had brought up that his stance was strengthened by Lieutenant Tranziski's saying that no laws were broken. Well, that was not my intent on including that report. What Lieutenant Tranziski, I know I'm messing his name up, was aiming at is he felt apologetic when he came out and viewed what was going on. Whether the zoning enforcement officer was there, I don't know. He says, "Wow, you're being served an injustice here, but there's nothing I can do." He said the way that you should be directing your work would be through your town. He says there's maybe safety bylaws or some other type of bylaw that would stop this. He said there was nothing he could do, but he did go and speak with the gun club president, Mr. Mercier, about a target. I think you have pictures of it, basically right on the property line, shooting right into my land where I was yarding out wood. And he said, "Would you please disconnect that target?" So he did go. Mercier did come at some point. I didn't witness it. Take the target down, but the yard arm's still there. He could put the target back up, and if he wants to go against the cease and desist, start using that target again.
So I'm taking it the big thing that you're looking for from this, because again, you're kind of in conclusion, wasn't a conclusion to draw us what you were looking for this evening. It sounds more like you want an overturn of Mr. Briggs' decision about where he's going for a cease and desist on this, or and I want to bring this to the board to discuss in a moment. You did bring forward a very important fact that I think there's a big injustice that's done in Massachusetts when it comes to the licensing, the criterias for a gun club. And I've been a gun owner for many years, love guns, avid shooter. But the regulations need to be put in place by the state and enforceable by the state. And again, it's kind of getting off a tangent with that. But in our thing, and even the officer from the state was able to tell you, unfortunately, it's not a bylaw of berms, because I know that was discussed in there, height of berms, how land was moved, what's placed there. There should be a more strict guide with that. What we need to do is look at where our bylaws are allowed to give us the authority to try and change things. Right now, and this is from me, this is not the rest of the board, again, to be able to discuss it more, is that I kind of feel we're working on such a big scale right now of what has happened there at the club and what's going to be happening or what they want to happen, that right now we're trying to get everything in order and get a grasp of what's happening. And the safety issue is a big concern. So we need to look at where we can be at with that and legally enforce things. I know right now with things going to different courts, it actually throws more of a wrench in some of the works as to what we need to do. I don't know if you want to discuss anything on that right now, Ron or Anthony, with that? No?
Can I maybe reiterate that, again, my stance is that there's a cease and desist on the use of that property issued by the selectmen of this town and reinforced by your board. So why cannot you hold to that? Why, in whose responsibility it is, I've been getting that a lot. Even the police chief himself told me, we don't know whose responsibility it is to mandate these laws, and in this case, the cease and desist. I was told it was the zoning official.
Right now, it would be Mr. Briggs
And
that,
so why does
in
he
his
not
decision-
enforce it?
and his decision would be at this time to not do it. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that at all or not. You don't
It's
have
not-
to.
It's not actually my decision. Believe me, the town has legal counsel like you wouldn't believe on this. The cease and desist, as it has been explained to me, covers the use of the shooter shed. They can't shoot from the shooter shed, and they can't shoot from the top of the gun platform. There's nothing in any bit of writing that I see about limitations of them using the course to shoot.
And we did look, because
I
you
do
put
have
all
a
the sections
copy
in
of,
there.
Cease and desist, and there is a
From
cease and desist
2010.
on the use of the targets within the 1,000-yard range. If you give me a minute, I can read it up for you, brought it down.
We're gonna just hold with Mr. When your turn is, you can.
Here's a cease and desist right here.
Violation of 629, the cease and desist of the expansion, not the position.
And again, I'm going on what council is telling
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I'm holding the
Yeah.
cease and desist right here, if you would like to read it.
Yeah, and it's, yeah, I mean, go ahead if you'd like to.
Read it.
Or would you like to read it out loud, sir? So that way we can have it on record as well.
You can read it, that way nobody can misconstrue your words.
The club is hereby ordered to cease and desist the use of the 1,000-yard long range until such time as a special permit and site plan approval process has been completed for the 1,000+ yard range and/or finding from the appropriate permit granting authority. The cease and desist order is effective immediately upon receipt of this letter.
Yes, but it doesn't restrict them, as far as I'm being told, from use of the rest of their range.
Well, that would be another, if it was in fact, I was told that in fact by the town administrator, which I found surprising that he should be interpreting. He says, as long as they're not using a 1,000-yard target, they can use all targets within. To me, the word range, I had quite advanced math through my career as a student. A range is all the points within two parameters. The 1,000-yard parameter being one, the source of the shooting being the other. All points between. If they wanted only to stop the use of the 1,000-yard target, they would have said 1,000-yard target. Simple
Yeah.
as that.
I think the biggest problem is we're going back now to the year that this was all originally drafted up and done with a cease and desist, and maybe better language should have been
Yes,
used in there
because I
to give
can
a tighter bond on what they do. And that's why we need to look, as the zoning board of appeals, that if anything going forward is granted or taken away, that it's specific, so that there's no loopholes into interpretation. Unfortunately, law even at times has interpretation. That's why we have courts that hash out, and then a judge will decide with that. So unfortunately, this time, from what we've received from town council and kind of what I'm going on, again, I can't speak for these gentlemen, I wouldn't see overturning what they're calling a cease and desist, because they're not using what the initial permit was going from that structure and using that 1,000-yard range. And again, maybe they should have at the time said all from 0 to 1,000 yards of such a specific area,
Basically, the word range.
you know.
That is the word range.
But again,
But if I could bring up
interpretation.
one more point.
Yes, you may.
I had used illegal berms. The zoning official had corrected me, saying, no, as long as soil is not removed from the area, excavation is allowed. Well, this gun club presented to the conservation an NOI back in 2017 on their expansion. And they quoted that no soil disturbance would be made within the establishment of the targets. I do have that here too, the NOI. And through the photographs, I don't know what photographs you have, you can clearly see that. I mean, talk about soil movement. This is target F, where no soil movement on the establishment of a target would be established. I mean, on and on. The guy wore out a bulldozer up there.
Yeah.
This is target J, the furthest north target that, we're talking of. The 1,000-yard target, in fact.
Yeah, we understand that. Unfortunately, it doesn't really have kind of a bearing on what we're discussing right now with the cease and desist.
Well, why I bring these points up is this is so much ammunition of why that range should be shut down until these basically outlawed activities are corrected.
And again, we can't call them, and we can't say they're outlawed because of the fact that the things that they're doing need to be reviewed. Some of the things that you're bringing up for that need to be looked at further, and also will take a bearing on the hearing that will be coming up. So we actually thank you very much for providing us with lots of nice pictures. And this is something that I would say to present us at the hearing, if you can come to it on the 23rd, or someone else that would be happy to discuss it if you can't make it. But at this time, I think we've had enough discussion on that. I need to move forward with a vote from the board. So the vote would be on whether or not we instill another cease and desist order and enforce it to be in place to override Mr. Briggs' decision at this time not to, I guess you'd say, fully enforce a cease and desist or feel it necessary.
What would be involved in a new cease and desist order? What does that take?
That we would have to go to council with. We'd have to go to council to figure that all out.
The select board and the council for that.
You know,
Maybe we need to discuss it with the town council and how you, I don't know.
I understand that. We really need to make a vote whether or not we'd move forward on that or not to be able to bring it to them, whether it was decided to do so or not. Do you have any other discussion? Anything for you, Anthony? So I make a motion to take a vote whether we bring it forward to town council and select board
I think we should.
to make a recommendation for a new cease and desist. So at this time, all in favor to go forward to try to make a new cease and desist order, bring to the town? Opposed? Motion fails. We need a unanimous decision for a board of 3. So at this time, it will not be brought forward to initiate a new cease and desist. Okay. Thank you very much for your information. And again, this information will all be brought forward on the 23rd when there's a hearing to discuss the actual use of the property and the pad and the shed that will be put forward to the town for their application. Okay, thank you.
How many members will be present at that hearing?
I do not know. We are hoping for 4. We'd like 5. It's a five-member board, but we can't know that off answer. At this
Well,
time, I'm going to move on to our next hearing.
One last point I will bring up,
Yes, sir.
that the town residents should also be aware of this, that is a very dangerous situation. It's not only me out there, there's many not pedestrians, hikers, people that run four-wheelers and whatnot. Many times, people I've spoke to about that club say, yes, that club is an accident waiting to be happening. With the town's knowledge of this danger and not stopping the activities that are taking on, they're constantly referring to liability. If someone does get hurt out there, I would see that the town would be held liable for injury. And the type of weapons they're using on that property, there's gonna be a lot of activity or construction work on that power line. That's just, I'd say, another 300-400 feet beyond that furthest worst target. There's gonna be guys up on them lines. Those bullets could easily reach those guys. I think at least you should warn those construction people, electrical people, that there is gunfire going on. Uncontrolled gunfire as far as berms and whatnot.
At this time, I need to stop you, sir. And we
Okay,
are
I
gonna
just
move on.
wanted to say that.
I do appreciate
I think
that.
this is very important, and I do not think
I
that
agree.
this town is addressing this at all. And I'm ready to use the common word to leave, you know? It's just terrible what's going on here. For 35 years I've been on that property. 15 before.
All right, at this time, sir,
Thank you.
I do need you to stop talking.
I just wanted to get the word out to the public.
Mr. Shalou, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And if you'd like to come forward. Did you want to summarize your complaint and what you were looking for this evening to make it a little easier for us?
Sure, and
Okay,
I'm sure you
thank
didn't get everything that I sent because the original complaint was that thick, so clearly you didn't.
No.
So I did
Yeah,
bring
what's
color
pertinent
copies
to
as I
us.
had written in my complaint, so we get into the supporting documents of the complaint. But my complaint was related to the 2010 cease and desist order. The building inspector in October 2018, this last year, while this was in court and in remand from the court to be dealt with locally, cited a violation of condition 6 of the 2010 permit, which was the start and stop times relating to the gun club, putting the gun club on notice that the conditions of the 2010 permit were still enforceable because that was the conditions that were evaluated that allowed them to continue as a pre-existing non-conforming use. And when I realized that he had sent that cease and desist letter on condition 6, and they did adjust their shooting hours in response to that cease and desist, because he said they would shut down the gun club if they did not adjust their shooting hours. They would issue a new cease and desist. So they clearly can do that, and I'm sure that went through the lawyers, because everything goes through the lawyers. So that letter that went to the gun club, notifying them of a condition 6 violation was cited. I submitted a complaint noting other conditions from the 2010 special permit relating to topography, the backstop location not being a nuisance to the neighborhood, and there was a single backstop in 2010. That backstop has since been removed. So all of the new backstops that are there are new backstops. Okay, so this isn't an expansion. This isn't the 629 violation, which is what Mr. Polchlepek was saying is the cease and desist, not a shooting position. And the only thing I'll say about that is the pictures that you were given at your ZBA hearing in 2017 didn't show that upper shooting pad. That was never discussed. That was never part of the cease and desist. It's part of the expanded area that the cease and desist applied to, but it was never that upper shooting pad. So wherever that came from, I have no idea. And if you go back and look at your pictures, they're not even on the Google Earth photos given to you at your ZBA hearing in 2017. The latest photo given to you didn't even show that upper shooting pad. So it was no way considered being the source of the cease and desist. But I digress. in the 2010 permit, there are clearly other conditions that have been grossly violated. They have moved the location of that one backstop that was evaluated for its effect on the neighborhood. They have completely redone the topography, which are all these supporting documents. I took both Google Earth photos and posts from the Facebook site of the gun club. So if you didn't get that, I will leave you with my full copy of that. What I am asking is that, in the building inspector in his letter to me said that he refused to address my assertion that these other conditions are in violation because the gun club is submitting an application, which that application refuses to address all of these changes that are in violation of the 2010 permit. So that application that is before you, as the gun club continues to insist, is really only related to 2 shooting sheds. And as their site plan shows, nothing in there about any of this other changes that have occurred in violation of the 2010 special permit. Another condition of the 2010 special permit is that they will remain in compliance with state and local laws. They are in violation of 629 of the town's bylaws. That was cited by the select board as acting as the code enforcement officer. That was re-supported by the ZBA in your evaluation of the violation of 629. So they are clearly in violation. If you even say you can't determine that they're in violation of all the topography changes, of all the vegetation removal, which was another condition, the changing of backstop locations and going out to 1,000 yards from 100 yards, because that's where their original backstop was. There's pictures of it in their 2010 submission, and that was all part of what I submitted as well. I mean, I got the original 2010 conditions that detail all of that out. And the other thing is that the town is actually able to recoup legal fees for these violations of the 2010 permit. If you have to enforce these conditions, the town, as one of the conditions of the special permit, is reimbursable for any legal fees incurred in enforcing these. So if Mr. Martin's so concerned about the town going bankrupt over the legal fees, then he should maybe use this. But, so I'm asking that the ZBA direct the code enforcement officer to enforce the conditions of the 2010 special permit, because those will not be addressed under the shooting shed application that has been received, and direct the gun club to stop all operations because they cannot return to the conditions that existed in 2010. I mean, I've got the forestry plan in here that shows they removed 2,500,000 square feet of lumber, hundreds of cords of wood. I mean, the Google Earth photos I did sequentially so you can actually see the changes in vegetation removal. I did a group for topography so you can see the bulldozing that occurred there, the change the topography of the property. I've got a group showing where the original backstop was, which is, this is the 2010 picture. That's the old shooting shed. That's where the old backstop was here. Now the new shooting shed is going to be back over here. Well, this is later in 2010. They actually started clearing out for a 300-yard range there, but the old backstop still remained. Okay, but that was without permits. That was, you know, they didn't ever mention that in their 2010 special permit. They were only going to do a new shooting shed back here. Okay. So all these changes, there are clear conditions that were set in 2010 for the continued operation of this gun club under the pre-existing non-conforming use. They are in violation of those conditions, and therefore they should be remove their grandfathering protections and be deemed to be residential property, and all shooting activity stop. That's what should happen. Or at least enforce these conditions.
You know, you made a statement which is kind of presumptuous with a lot of these conditions are not being brought forward at the hearing. That is one of the things. I know you were at one of our last meetings, and it was read in our minutes again. Topographical maps, surveys,
And the gun club
all was requested.
Right. And they did not provide
None of
those.
this has been provided.
Correct.
So therefore, it is going to be addressed. We need to know exactly what is on the property. One of their statements that they made, and not to get off this topic, but just to let you know, we are concerned with it. In their application where they wanted to put the shed and said, we don't want to provide all these things because a homeowner would not have to. This is not a home. This is not for home use. I do not walk out to my garage and shoot from my garage. So we do know the land use has to conform to what we specified, or as the zoning board did, that time that they permitted this back in 2010, and what conditions. It also allows us to forward what if the building is to be built, what conditions at that point are made. Things can be, as far as backstops, could be
Right, but you
shooting
can't.
distances, it could be a lot of things. So at this time, you can't say we're not bringing it forward.
Well, they're not
I believe
gonna-
it all shall, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna be there, Mr. Schuler. We'd be happy for you to bring that forward and
Well, I will,
discussions
but
on it.
if they don't put that in their application, then how can we address that before the board as areas of risk, of areas that are impact to the environment? All the things that would, if they had gone for these special permits prior to the changes, call them expansion, call them whatever you wanna call it. If they had come subsequent to 2010, when they realized they're gonna do more than just this single shooting shed change, then the neighbors could have talked about the safety issues to Mr. Polchopek's property, the disturbance of wetlands where a lot of these backstops have been placed, the amount of rocks that are in those backstops, which can make it completely impossible to control ricochet. I mean, all the things that, if they don't address those as part of their application, then I can't address those as part of your meeting. I can only address the application as submitted. I can say that application is not adequately supported and you can deny it.
The zoning board most definitely can address issues of concern for safety for what the usage of that property will be from that shed.
Okay, but even if you deny this, if you deny the application because there's inadequate supporting documentation that you requested, then it goes back to exactly what it was last year, which is an interpretation of the cease and desist, which allows them to shoot at, from 35 yards forward. They're using all of the expanded range that was the violation. Okay, that was the violation, an expanded range, substantial violation that he showed you under the powers test. The Bacon and Wilson lawyers presented the expansion. It was called the 1,000+ yard
And again, I
range.
think a lot of those things we can't, woulda, coulda, shoulda back then, or what we're gonna do. I can only say,
Well, the violation
once
was
the next
cited.
step goes, what we can do from there. Right now with things, I don't really know. Did you want, you think you want to say something? Ron?
Well, the town lawyer works for the town. If you direct the lawyer to, cite these, evaluate these if they are in fact violations, which I believe it clearly is, one, present those to the judge and request that the judge issue an injunction to stop the activity until he gets a chance to review all of this and see if they are in fact in violation of the 2010 conditions because of their unpermitted expansion.
So just
That's what I'm
wrapping.
requesting.
So you're asking us a lot of different things under one complaint. To wrap it all up, what your one thing that you're looking for this evening is us to go forward and try to initiate legal ramifications for any illegal
I want the
actions
same,
against them.
I want the same enforcement of all the other conditions that they did for condition 6 last year.
Who did condition 6?
You did.
I didn't.
You sent a letter for enforcing
I
condition
sent
6.
them a letter that I had no documentation of anybody signing a formal complaint, and I could not enforce it. I didn't even know if I could enforce it.
Let me see what that letter says.
And counsel advises me that I probably couldn't
Couldn't
enforce it.
enforce it.
I am not sure that letter did not go out without counsel seeing it first.
As a matter of fact, I got highly chastised for taking something into my own hands. That will not happen again.
This is, but you are informed in caps that any further violation of the curfew, sunset curfew, on shooting at your establishment will result in an immediate cease and desist in all shooting activities at the club or its grounds. Okay, so you didn't, if you didn't give them a cease and desist, you gave them this notice that they were in violation, that you clearly saw them in violation of condition 6.
I didn't witness any violation. I was working on Mr. Laborde's words and 2 or 3 other people that had been witness to the fact that they were shooting after sunset.
Right, but you still said condition 6 applies. If condition 6 applies, then the other conditions still apply.
Except I was told that I don't have the power to shut them down. There is nothing in the statement of cease and desist. Believe
Not
me.
the current one. You could reissue under, it's been brought to your attention that they're in violations of outstanding conditions in condition 6. These were the conditions that existed and allowed them to continue to operate as a pre-existing non-conforming entity in a residential area. They violated these conditions. It resulted in all of the nuisance, all of the other impact on the neighborhood which was experienced starting in 2016. Okay, it is a violation of these conditions, just as it was a violation of condition 6. If condition 6 is still enforceable, so is every other condition on here.
And
But
I'm
it doesn't,
told that
it
it's
doesn't
not.
appear to be.
Well, then I'd like that in writing from the lawyers, please.
Okay, so at this time, we're gonna wrap this up at that, okay? I really don't think there's anything that we can vote on to change it, because I can't make him enforce what we don't know there's a power to do. All I can say as a board, if we're all in agreement, is to send a letter to our lawyer requesting him to look into what the enforceability
And
is
CC me on the.
for this.
Can you ask him to do that as well, so that I understand what his response is and his reasoning why?
I would have to see whether I can't make him do it,
Since
whatever.
it's a response,
It's an
that's
internal-
gonna be the end result of my complaint, that's gonna be how my complaint's resolved, is whatever that lawyer says. And I want the rest of the people in Granby camp to know that this is being ignored.
Well, it's not being ignored. Again, I think if you
I
would
think it
look
is.
into, believe me, again, for safety, I've seen a lot of bad things happen with guns, as well as positive. I don't want to see anything bad happen. I don't want to see anything on your property happen. We're not ignoring it. We're trying to look at what we can do in a legal manner and systematically take those steps to make sure things are safe. One of the steps that's coming forward is on the 23rd, when we have our next meeting for the hearing. Again, things can be set in motion after that hearing that may take things in a safer manner. Okay, be it they get granted permission to build this structure that they want, but there are guidelines put in which will affect how the use is, or not put on. There are many different things that can happen, but we need to take a systematic approach to it. So I don't know what the board recommends that we have as a resolution to this complaint.
I think we have to wait till the 23rd meeting. See what they bring in for documentation and,
Well, I would be willing to suspend my complaint as long as my timeliness remains and readdress this at a subsequent meeting to the 23rd.
I'm making a motion at this time to table Mr. Chalou's complaint, which may be readdressed after the 23rd, after the hearing. Do I have a second to that motion? All in favor? In favor, so it would be tabled. So at this time-
I can accept that,
You-
pending the outcome. And that's why I actually
And
waited
I
to file.
appreciate you working with us on that. so
And I
that
waited
way
to
we
file
can-
this until my appeal of his decision, until I saw what the gun club was submitting, to see if they actually addressed all of the areas that I could then talk about in their application process at the meeting.
Yeah.
So, but if I'm going to be allowed to bring this forward at the meeting, and I'm going to be given the time to go through all of this
Well, I
kind
don't
of
really have
information.
time for every single piece, but I definitely
Because I was
would
told
like to
before I was going to be
call.
very limited, even in the public hearing, that, you know, it's going to have to allow everyone in the room time to speak if they choose to.
And that's it. You may have a lot of other people that have very valid points.
So maybe I'll go last. Would I also have use of the TV? Because I can show you much better pictures on the TV that's there at the senior
Not
center.
that I know of.
Okay,
I-
well,
I
I'm just
will
saying,
ask,
when I
but-
do my photocopying, I mean, as you can see, I mean, I got a,
You have to
inkjet
remember that the club themselves, because it is a hearing for them,
Mhm.
has first and foremost what they like to present a rebuttal.
I understand.
So with that.
Yeah.
All right. Do you gentlemen have anything else you'd like to discuss? Or-
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I make a motion to close this meeting of the ZBA. A second. All in favor? Call it at 6:38. Closed.